Welcome to African Folktales by Tammy. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories. Also share this story to someone who might be interested. Let's get into the story. The first time Elvis Wigwe laid eyes on Bianca, he knew there was something different about her. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was undoubtedly stunning. It was the way she carried herself, with a quiet strength that was impossible to ignore. He met her at a friend's wedding in Umwik, a bustling town known for its vibrant culture and tight-knit community. While others danced and laughed, Bianca had been standing by the drinks table, adjusting the hem of her friend's gown, ensuring it didn't drag against the floor. Elvis had watched her from across the room, intrigued. He was used to women noticing him first. His broad shoulders, well-defined features, and confident aura always drew attention. But Bianca had been different. She hadn't looked his way, hadn't even acknowledged his presence. That was what pulled him in. He had walked over with his signature smile, introduced himself, and for the first time in a long time, felt nervous when she responded with only a polite nod. It took patience, persistence, and genuine effort to get Bianca to warm up to him. She was cautious, not unfriendly, but not easily swayed by charm either. She was the kind of woman who needed to see consistency, sincerity. Elvis didn't mind, in fact, he loved the challenge. Over the following months, he courted her the traditional way, long evening strolls in the cool Umwik breeze. Heartfelt letters slipped into her bag. Surprise visit to a small fashion boutique where she spent most of her time designing and sewing elegant outfits. Everyone in town admired them. Their love was pure, the kind that poets wrote about. It was rare to see a couple so deeply in sync, laughing at private jokes, finishing each other's sentences, and standing by each other through everything. Elvis was a man deeply in love, and he wasn't afraid to show it. When he proposed to Bianca at the same spot where they first met, under the large mango tree at Umwik Square, people cheered. They knew this was a love that was meant to last. But not everyone was happy about their union. Elvis's mother, Mary Wigwe, had always been skeptical of Bianca. From the very first introduction, she had studied the young woman with sharp, calculating eyes, searching for flaws, reasons why she wasn't good enough for her son. Mary had always envisioned Elvis marrying someone from a wealthy, prominent family, a woman who could bring prestige to their name, who came from good stock. Bianca, though beautiful and intelligent, was from a humble background. Her father had been a struggling tailor before passing away, leaving her mother to raise her and her siblings alone. "You can't marry just anyone, Elvis," Mary had warned him on countless occasions. "A woman must come from a home of respect. What do we know about her people? What do they have to offer?" Elvis had argued, defended Bianca fiercely. "She's hardworking, Mama. She built her own business from nothing. She's kind, respectful, and she loves me. That's all that matters." But Mary was not easily convinced. The night before the wedding, she sat Elvis down one last time, her voice firm yet laced with desperation. "You will regret this. Marry a woman without proper roots, and you will suffer for it. Mark my words." But Elvis had ignored her. His love for Bianca was too strong to be swayed by whispers of disapproval. They married in a grand ceremony in Umwik, attended by nearly the entire town. Bianca walked down the aisle in a gown she had sewn herself, delicate lace and intricate beadwork that shimmered under the sunlight. She looked like something out of a dream, and Elvis had felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude that she had chosen him. Marriage only deepened their love. Their home was filled with laughter, warmth, and quiet moments of tenderness. Bianca cooked his favorite meals, stayed up late discussing business ideas with him, massaged his shoulders when he came home exhausted. Elvis, in turn, supported her dreams, encouraging her to expand her boutique, proudly boasting about her work to anyone who would listen. Despite the love they shared, Mary never stopped watching, never stopped waiting for Bianca to slip up, to prove that she was unworthy. And though Elvis was firm in his love, the seed of doubt his mother had planted remained buried, dormant, waiting. For now, though, it was just them, the couple everyone envied, the love story that seemed untouchable. Bianca's belly was beginning to round with their first child, a testament to the future they had built together. Everything was perfect, At least that's what Bianca thought. She had no idea that the greatest test of their love was yet to come. The early months of marriage between Elvis and Bianca Wigwe were nothing short of blissful. Their love, already deep before their union, blossomed in ways that surprised even them. The small, cozy house they had moved into after the wedding was filled with laughter, whispered conversations late into the night, and quiet moments of understanding. Every day felt like a reaffirmation of their love, proof that they had made the right choice in choosing each other. Bianca settled effortlessly into her role as a wife. She still ran her boutique, but now it felt different. There was an added sense of purpose, a deeper motivation to build something lasting, not just for herself, but for the family she and Elvis were creating together. She would wake early to prepare his meals before he left for work, pack his favorite snacks in a small bag, and slip in little handwritten notes, sometimes words of encouragement, other times playful reminders of their love. Elvis, on his part, was an attentive and devoted husband. His job as a construction supervisor often took him on trips across different parts of the country. He would sometimes be gone for days, but no matter how far he traveled, he always found a way to stay connected. Every evening without fail, he called Bianca, asking about her day, listening to the smallest details, making sure she never felt alone. And when he returned home, he always made it up to her. He would surprise her with gifts, sometimes something simple, like a scarf in her favorite color, other times something extravagant, like a piece of jewelry he had spotted in a shop window and thought would look perfect on her. But more than the gifts, it was the way he made her feel cherished that meant the most. After long trips, he would scoop her into his arms the moment he walked through the door, whispering how much he missed her, how the days felt longer without her presence. Despite their demanding schedules, they made time for each other. Friday nights were reserved for them. Sometimes it was a quiet dinner at home, other times a drive to a small restaurant in the heart of Gokana, where they would eat fresh seafood and reminisce about their early days together. Their love was the kind that others envied, a marriage where both partners nurtured and watered their bond, ensuring it continued to grow. Months passed, and their happiness only deepened. Then came the news that would change their lives forever. It was an early morning in August, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Bianca had woken up feeling different, a strange mix of exhaustion and nervous energy settling in her bones. For the past few days, she had noticed small changes within her body, the kind that couldn't be ignored. She was late. A rush of emotions flooded her: hope, fear, excitement, but she didn't want to assume. She needed to be sure. So she dressed quickly, barely touching her breakfast, and made her way to the small pharmacy down the street. Her hands trembled as she paid for the pregnancy test, her heart hammering as she walked back home. Minutes later, she stood in the bathroom, staring at the results, her breath catching in her throat. Positive. Tears welled in her eyes, tears of joy, disbelief, gratitude. She pressed a hand to her belly, still flat, still unchanged, but already carrying the promise of new life. Elvis had been at work when she found out, and she decided to wait for him to return. The hours stretched endlessly, each minute filled with anticipation. She busied herself in the kitchen, preparing his favorite meal, egusi soup with pounded yam, taking extra care to make it perfect. When she finally heard the sound of his car pulling into the driveway, her heart leaped. She wiped her hands hurriedly, smoothing down her dress, her excitement barely contained. The moment he stepped through the door, she ran into his arms, holding him tightly. He laughed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I missed you too, my love. What's going on?" She pulled back slightly, looking up at him with shining eyes. "Elvis," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We're going to be parents." For a moment, time stood still. Elvis blinked, his mind struggling to process her words. And then it hit him like a tidal wave of emotion crashing over him. His hands instinctively went to her stomach, even though there was no visible change yet. "Are you serious?" His voice was barely above a whisper, as if he was afraid saying it too loudly would break the magic of the moment. Bianca nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, a deep, joyous laugh rumbled from his chest as he lifted her off the ground, spinning her around. "We're going to be parents," he shouted, his happiness too overwhelming to contain. That night, their home glowed with love and celebration. Elvis couldn't stop touching her stomach, couldn't stop whispering about all the dreams he had for their child. He spoke about teaching them how to ride a bicycle, about the bedtime stories he would read, about how he would be the best father in the world. Bianca had never seen him so happy, and as she lay in his arms that night, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, she felt completely and utterly at peace. Their love had blossomed even more, their bond strengthened by the tiny life growing within her. She had no idea that this joy would soon be threatened, that the same love that felt unshakable would soon be tested in ways she never imagined. The months following Bianca's pregnancy announcement were filled with changes. As her belly grew, so did Elvis's responsibilities. His construction company had recently expanded, meaning more contracts, more deals, and unfortunately, more travel. Though he hated being away from Bianca, he had no choice. He reassured her constantly, promising that all the long nights and exhausting trips were for their future, so that their child would have the best life possible. Bianca understood, but that didn't make it easier. The house felt empty without him, and though they spoke on the phone every night, his absence left a void that nothing could fill. It was during one of his trips that Elvis made a decision he believed was in Bianca's best interest. He called his mother, Mary, and asked her to move in for a while. "Mama, I don't want Bianca to be alone. She needs help now that she's getting heavier. Just stay with her till I return," he had said. Mary had agreed almost too quickly. Her voice had held an eagerness that Elvis, in his exhaustion, had failed to notice. "You've done well, my son. A woman shouldn't be alone in times like this. I will take care of everything." And so Mary moved in. At first things seemed manageable. She would help with cooking, ensuring Bianca ate well, and even accompanied her to antenatal appointments. But it didn't take long before the cracks began to show. The first sign came subtly, small remarks disguised as concern. "Ah, Bianca, you're still lying down. Other women wake up early, cook, clean, and even go to the farm while pregnant. But look at you, just one pregnancy, and you're already acting like a queen." Bianca, used to respecting elders, had simply smiled. "Mama, I was feeling a little tired this morning." "Tired?" Mary scoffed. "Didn't your mother teach you that a woman's strength is measured by how much she can endure? You young girls of nowadays are too soft." Bianca had swallowed the sting of the words. She told herself it was just the way Mary spoke, that she meant no harm, but as the days passed, Mary's words became sharper. She would make loud remarks about how Bianca was always in bed, how she had small things stress her. "When I was pregnant with Elvis, I was still sweeping, cooking, and even carrying firewood. That's why my son turned out strong. I don't know what kind of lazy child you are raising." Bianca, always respectful, never answered back. Instead, she would call Elvis, her voice soft yet tired. "Baby, Mama is being a little too hard on me. She keeps saying I'm lazy and that I should be doing more." Elvis, though tired from his long days, always reassured her. "Don't listen to her, my love. I know how strong you are. Just endure, I'll speak to her." And he did. He called his mother one evening. "Mama, Bianca is pregnant, not sick. You have to stop talking to her like that." Mary had sighed dramatically. "Ah, Elvis, you are allowing this girl to control you. I am only telling her the truth. But since you say I should stop, fine. I will keep my mouth shut." But she didn't. Instead, she doubled her efforts. She would drop loud sighs when Bianca walked into the room, muttering things under her breath. "The house smells like laziness. Pregnant women should move around, not sit like statues." She would rearrange the things Bianca had placed, criticizing her organization skills. "Can't you do anything right?" She would make exaggerated gestures of sweeping or washing plates while Bianca sat down, ensuring that the younger woman felt guilty. And worst of all, she would act innocent whenever Elvis called, laughing and telling him everything was fine. One evening, Bianca had been too exhausted to get up from bed immediately after Mary called her. The older woman stormed into her room, staring at her with eyes filled with disapproval. "You are carrying one child, not 10, she spat. "Why are you acting like you are dying? Some women still work full-time jobs with pregnancy. but you," she scoffed. "You just want to be waited on like a madam. Is this how you were raised?" Tears had stung Bianca's eyes, but she didn't answer. She had learned that nothing she said would change Mary's mind. That night, she called Elvis again, her voice breaking. "Baby, she's getting worse. I don't know how much more I can take." Elvis was frustrated. He loved his mother, but he also loved his wife. He couldn't view places at once, and the constant tension was weighing on him. He called Mary again, this time his voice sharper. "Mama, I don't want to hear that you are stressing Bianca again. If I come home and find her upset, I won't be happy." Mary had remained silent for a long moment before saying, "I understand, my son. Forgive me if I have done anything wrong." But as soon as the call ended, her face twisted into something dark. "So now she runs to my son to complain," she muttered under her breath. From that night, her insults became more cutting. She no longer hid her disdain. She would make Bianca feel small in her own home, belittling her at every opportunity. And she was patient. She was waiting for the perfect moment. She knew exactly what she was doing, and soon she would strike. Mary had always been patient. She knew that in order to fully drive a wedge between Elvis and Bianca, she couldn't rush. She had to make sure her son doubted Bianca, had to make sure he no longer saw her as the loving wife he had married. And so she waited, carefully planting her lies one false accusation at a time. At first, she made sure to sound hesitant when calling Elvis. She wanted him to believe she was merely concerned. "My son," she would begin, her voice low and trembling as if she was holding back from speaking. "I don't want to be the one to say this, but as your mother, I cannot sit back and watch you be deceived." Elvis, tired from his travels and already dealing with the pressure of work, would sigh. "Mama, what is it now?" Mary would hesitate, making sure to sound reluctant, then lower her voice. "I don't know what Bianca does when you're not around, but I see things. Men come and go from this house. She laughs with them, sits close to them, and she is spending your money carelessly. I have never seen a woman waste money the way she does." Elvis frowned. "Mama, that's not true. Bianca isn't like that." "But how do you know?" Mary countered quickly. "You are not here. I am the one seeing things. Just yesterday, a man stood by the gate for almost an hour. When I asked her who he was, she dismissed me. This woman is not who you think she is, my son." Elvis was silent for a long moment before sighing. "I don't believe it. I know my wife." Mary pressed on. "I just pray you don't find out too late." After ending the call, Elvis immediately rang Bianca. He didn't mention his mother's accusations, but his questions were different that evening. He asked her about her day, about who visited, about how she had spent the money he sent. Bianca, as always, answered truthfully, completely unaware that she was being tested. "I didn't go anywhere today, baby. I was feeling a little tired, so I just stayed home and rested," she told him. "Mama went to see one of her friends for a few hours. When she got back, I made dinner for her." Elvis let out a breath, relieved. "I know you, my love. That's why I trust you." Bianca laughed softly. "Of course you can trust me." "Why would you even say that?" He didn't answer. He just told her he loved her and ended the call. But Mary wasn't done. Each day she fed Elvis more lies, intensifying her claims. She spoke of imaginary men, fabricated encounters, and exaggerated innocent gestures into acts of betrayal. "She is making a fool of you, my son. How can you be so blind?" Elvis tried to resist. He tried to hold on to the love he had for Bianca, but the weight of his mother's constant accusations was becoming unbearable. He began questioning everything. He found himself overthinking Bianca's words, wondering if she was hiding something from him. One evening, after yet another phone call from Mary, Elvis could no longer take it. He had planned on staying away for another week, but he needed to see things for himself. He didn't tell Bianca he was returning. Only his mother knew. And Mary, she was ready. She had already put her plan in motion. That morning, she had arranged for a man, a paid accomplice, to be in Bianca and Elvis's bed while Bianca was out running an errand. The man, a local drunkard desperate for money, had been promised a handsome sum to simply lie in the bed when Elvis arrived. Elvis's flight landed earlier than expected. He drove straight home, his heart heavy with suspicion. When he arrived, the house was quiet. But as he stepped into the bedroom, his blood ran cold. A man was in his bed, a stranger. Everything inside Elvis exploded at once. Rage, pain, humiliation. He didn't wait for an explanation. The man, seeing the fury in Elvis's eyes, bolted from the bed, stumbling as he rushed past Elvis and out of the house. Mary was right behind him, screaming dramatically, clutching her chest as if she was in shock. Elvis, Elvis, do you see? I told you, I warned you, my son. But you wouldn't listen. Look at how she has disgraced our family. Elvis's hands clenched into fists. His vision was blurred with rage. He turned back to the bed, staring at the sheets that now felt tainted, at the scent of betrayal hanging in the air. They waited. Minutes passed, then an hour, and finally Bianca returned home unsuspecting. She had no idea what awaited her. The moment she walked in and saw Elvis standing there, her face lit up with joy. "Baby, you're back," she gasped, rushing toward him. "I didn't know you were coming home today." The sound of the slap echoed through the room. Bianca staggered, her hand flying to her cheek, her vision spinning from the force of the hit. Her lips trembled as she looked up at Elvis, confusion and pain filling her eyes. "Elvis," her voice was barely above a whisper. But Elvis wasn't listening. His hands were shaking with fury, his breath ragged. "How could you?" he roared. "After everything, Bianca, how could you betray me like this?" Tears welled in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" Mary stepped forward, her voice filled with mock sorrow. "Oh, my daughter, do not pretend." Elvis saw it with his own eyes. The man was in your bed, the man you brought into this home. Bianca's lips parted, but no words came out. She felt like she was drowning. Nothing was making sense. The love of her life, the man who had once promised to stand by her forever, now looked at her like she was a stranger, like she was nothing, and at that moment she knew. Everything had changed. Bianca stood frozen, her body trembling as she tried to comprehend the nightmare unfolding before her. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in, trapping her in a reality she couldn't escape. Her cheek still stung from the slap, but it was nothing compared to the ache spreading through her chest. "Elvis, please," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You know me. You know I would never do this to you." But Elvis was not listening. His jaw was clenched, his nostrils flared with rage. His mother stood beside him, her arms folded across her chest, shaking her head in exaggerated disappointment. "Enough of the lies, Bianca," Elvis spat, pacing the room like a man possessed. "I saw it with my own eyes. You disgust me." Bianca's heart squeezed painfully. "It's not true. Whatever you think you saw, I swear on my life, it's a lie." She reached out for his hand, desperate to make him see reason, but he pulled away as if her touch burned him. Mary scoffed loudly, stepping forward. "Ah, my son, don't let this Jezebel deceive you. She is shameless. Just look at her standing there, still trying to cover her sins. A woman caught in such disgrace should at least have the decency to keep quiet." Tears streamed down Bianca's face as she shook her head vigorously. "Mama, why are you doing this to me? What have I ever done to deserve this?" Mary hissed, "Don't call me Mama. I don't answer to harlots." The words sliced through Bianca like a knife. She clutched her belly instinctively, her breath ragged as she tried to form words that might reach Elvis. "I am carrying your child, our child. Please, don't do this. Don't push me away." Elvis let out a bitter laugh, his eyes dark with disbelief. "My child, you must think I'm stupid. That baby is not mine." Bianca gasped, her hand flying to her chest as if she had been physically struck. "Elvis, don't say that." "I will say it again," he thundered. "I don't know whose child you're carrying, but it's not mine. I will never claim a bastard." Mary clicked her tongue, shaking her head with fake pity. "It must be one of the many men she brings here when you're not around. I warned you, my son, but you refused to listen. Now look where we are." Bianca dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Elvis, please, I beg you. Look into my eyes and tell me you truly believe I could betray you like this." But Elvis wouldn't look at her. His fists clenched at his sides, his shoulders heaving with rage, and then, as if making a final decision, he turned on his heel and stormed into their bedroom. Bianca's stomach twisted in dread as she heard drawers opening and the unmistakable sound of luggage zipping. When he emerged moments later, he was carrying her clothes, shoes, and personal belongings in a large travel bag. Her vision blurred as he threw it at her feet. Get out. His voice was cold, emotionless. Bianca's mouth parted in shock. What? You heard me. Pack your things and leave my house. I don't want to see you here when I wake up in the morning. Bianca's entire body shook as she hugged her belly. Elvis, where will I go? This is our home. Elvis's eyes flashed. This is my home. You lost your place in it the moment you decided to disgrace me. Mary clapped her hands together dramatically. God forbid that my son should continue living under the same roof as a woman like you. Pack your things and go. Bianca's sobs grew louder as she tried one last time. Elvis, please, I love you. He turned away from her, refusing to look into her eyes. And that was when Bianca knew. There was no saving this. She wiped her tears with trembling hands, forced herself to stand, and bent down to pick up her bag. Her vision was blurry, her heart shattered, but she refused to break in front of them any further. With one final glance at the man she had loved with all her heart, she walked toward the door. Mary scoffed. And don't ever think of coming back, you shameless woman. Bianca didn't respond. The moment she stepped outside, the cold night air hit her, making her realize how truly alone she was. She had no plan, no clear idea of what to do next, but she knew one thing: she couldn't collapse now. She had something to hold on to. Her business. With shaking hands, she hailed a cab and gave the address of a realtor she had spoken to weeks ago about a possible shop expansion. She hadn't intended to rent an apartment, but now she had no choice. That night, she signed a lease on a tiny one-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of Guidado. It was nothing compared to the home she had built with Elvis, but at least it was hers. As she sat on the bare mattress, her bags beside her, she placed a protective hand over her belly. She had no husband, no support, but she had herself. And she would survive. Bianca sat on the small mattress in her new apartment, staring blankly at the wall. The dim light from the single bulb flickered, casting shadows that seemed to mirror the darkness in her heart. Sleep had eluded her for days. Every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Elvis's face, twisted with rage, filled with accusations, rejecting her like she was nothing. How had they gone from being so in love to this? She replayed the moment over and over, hoping to find a missing piece, a gap in reality that would make sense of it all. But no matter how many times she tried, the truth remained the same. Elvis had believed his mother over her. He had cast her aside without hesitation, without considering all the love they had built. Her fingers trembled as she touched her belly. Their child, the child he had denied. Tears burned her eyes, but she wiped them away. She couldn't break now. She had a life inside her depending on her strength. A knock at the door startled her, pulling her from her thoughts. Slowly she rose and opened it. The sight of her mother's face nearly broke her resolve. Bianca. Her mother, Mama Esther, stepped inside and pulled her into a tight embrace. The warmth of her touch melted Bianca's walls, and she sobbed into her mother's chest. I heard everything, her mother said gently, stroking her hair. Why didn't you come home? Bianca pulled away, shaking her head. I can't, Mama. This is my home now. I have a business here. I won't let them chase me away from my life. Her mother sighed. That man and his mother do not deserve you, my child. Come home and let us take care of you. You do not have to suffer alone. Bianca wiped her tears. I'm not going back. I will raise my child here. I will be fine. Mama Esther studied her daughter's face, then sighed in resignation. If this is what you want, I will support you. But promise me one thing: do not look back. Forget that man and his mother. They will regret what they did, but by then it will be too late. Bianca nodded, even though deep inside she knew it wouldn't be easy to forget. Meanwhile, across town, Elvis was trying to move on. Mary, now basking in the victory of having Bianca gone, had taken full control of her son's life. She spent his money without a second thought, ordering expensive fabrics, buying jewelry, and hosting gatherings for her friends at his expense. At first, Elvis didn't notice. He was too consumed with work, using it as a distraction from the hollow emptiness that had settled in his chest. But as the weeks passed, his mother became bolder. Elvis, she said one evening as they sat in the living room, it's time you take a new wife. He looked at her sharply. I am not interested in marrying anyone, Mama. Mary scoffed. You cannot stay alone forever. I know a good woman from a respectable family. Not like that useless Bianca. Elvis flinched at the mention of Bianca's name. "I don't want to talk about this." Mary frowned. "What do you mean? You must remarry." Elvis stood abruptly. "I said I don't want to talk about it." He turned and walked away, leaving Mary glaring after him. Despite his anger and pride, he couldn't bring himself to be with another woman. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered Bianca's smile, her laugh, the way she had looked at him with so much love. The memory tormented him, but he refused to admit it. Back in her world, Bianca refused to crumble. She had spent weeks grieving, but she knew she couldn't sit in sadness forever. She had a child to think of. So she did what she did best. She worked. Every morning, she forced herself out of bed and went to her boutique. She arranged fabrics, attended to customers, and placed new orders. The work kept her mind occupied, and though it didn't erase the pain, it gave her purpose. She also kept up with her antenatal visits, taking care of herself and her baby. Each kick reminded her that she wasn't alone. One evening, after a long day at the shop, she stood in front of a mirror, studying her growing belly. "I will be enough for you," she whispered, placing her hands protectively over it. "You will never feel unwanted. You will never feel unloved." And with that vow, she wiped away the last of her tears. She would raise her child alone. She would survive. Elvis Wigwe was beginning to feel trapped in his own life. At first, after Bianca left, he had convinced himself that he had done the right thing. His mother had assured him that he had dodged a great disaster, that Bianca had never truly loved him, and that he would soon find a better woman. He had tried to believe it, pushing away the ache in his chest. But as the weeks stretched into months, something within him began to shift. Mary had always been a strong presence in his life, but now she was becoming suffocating. She no longer just offered advice, she demanded obedience. Every decision he made, she had an opinion on. When he refused to entertain the women she paraded before him, she grew irritated. When he questioned her extravagant spending, she acted offended. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Mary turned to him with an air of authority. "Elvis, you cannot remain single forever. People are talking. You need a wife." Elvis rubbed his temple, exhaustion weighing him down. "Mama, I already told you I'm not ready." She scoffed. "Not ready? What is there to be ready for? Or are you still thinking about that disgrace of a woman?" He tensed but said nothing. Mary leaned forward. "A man needs a woman by his side. Someone who will give him strong children. Do not waste your years waiting for something that is already gone." Something in Elvis snapped. He had been silent for too long, allowing his mother to dictate his emotions, his choices. But he was tired. "I said I'm not ready," he said firmly, "and I will not be forced." Mary's face darkened. "I am your mother. I only want what's best for you." Elvis stood abruptly. "If you really wanted what was best for me, you would have let me make my own decisions." Mary's lips parted in shock, but for the first time, Elvis didn't wait for her response. He turned and walked away, his heart heavy with an unease he couldn't shake. Meanwhile, across town, Bianca was experiencing a moment that would change her life forever. The pains had started in the early hours of the morning, a dull ache that quickly intensified into something unbearable. She barely had time to call for help before she was rushed to the hospital. The labor was long, her body exhausted from months of emotional and physical strain, but she fought through it. And then, just before dawn, a loud, beautiful cry filled the delivery room. Tears streamed down Bianca's face as the nurse placed the tiny baby in her arms. A girl. She looked down at the delicate features, the round cheeks, the tiny fingers curling against her skin. She had never known love like this. "Welcome, Stella," she whispered, her heart swelling with emotions too vast to contain. She spent the next few days in the hospital, recovering and staring in awe at the tiny life she had brought into the world. She vowed over and over that Stella would never feel unwanted, never feel abandoned. She would love her daughter enough for both parents. News of Stella's birth eventually reached Elvis. He had been at work when a friend mentioned it casually. "I heard Bianca had a baby girl," the man said. Elvis stiffened. For a brief moment, an unfamiliar pang shot through him, but then he shoved aside. "She can do whatever she wants," he said dismissively. "It has nothing to do with me." He told himself that he had made the right decision, that Bianca's child was not his. But deep inside, something unsettled him, and then the world as he knew it shattered. It happened unexpectedly. Elvis had returned home early from work one evening when he heard voices near the front gate. Curious, he stepped closer. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. His mother, Mary, was handing a wad of cash to a man Elvis recognized immediately. It was the same man he had seen in his bed the night he threw Bianca out. His blood ran cold. "What is going on here?" he demanded, his voice sharp as a blade. Mary and the man froze. The stranger quickly shoved the money into his pocket, his eyes darting nervously. Elvis stepped forward. "I said, what is going on?" He turned his glare on his mother. "Why are you giving him money?" Mary's hands trembled slightly, but she recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "Oh, my son, this is nothing. I was only helping a poor man." Elvis wasn't convinced. His gut told him something was very wrong. His gaze flickered to the man, who looked like he was itching to run. "You," Elvis said, his voice dangerously low. "Speak. Why are you here?" The man swallowed hard. I was just passing by, liar," Elvis bellowed, his patience snapping. He turned to Mary. "Tell me the truth." Mary hesitated. "Now." Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but there was none. She sighed, wringing her hands. "Elvis, my son, you have to understand. I only did what was best for you." A heavy silence fell. Elvis's heart pounded. "What did you do?" Mary exhaled deeply. "I paid him. That day, the day you found him in your bed." Elvis staggered back as if he had been physically struck. His mind reeled. You mean?" Mary spoke quickly. "It was for your own good. That woman would have destroyed you. I had to get rid of her." Elvis felt the ground shift beneath him. He turned to the man, his voice shaking with fury. "You were never with Bianca?" The man shook his head. "I was paid to be there." The weight of betrayal crashed into Elvis, knocking the breath from his lungs. He had thrown Bianca out. He had denied his child, and it had all been a lie. His legs gave way and he sank to the ground, clutching his head. His mother had destroyed his marriage, and he had let her. Elvis remained on his knees, his entire body numb with disbelief. His own mother had orchestrated everything, every lie, every manipulation, every piece of false evidence that led him to destroy the life he had built with Bianca. His breathing was ragged as he lifted his head to look at Mary. She stood before him, wringing her hands nervously, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. The weight of her deception was finally crashing down on her, but it was nothing compared to the storm raging inside Elvis. "Why?" His voice was barely above a whisper, hoarse and filled with pain. "Why would you do this to me?" Mary opened her mouth, then closed it, struggling to form words. "Elvis, my son, I only wanted the best for you." "Best for me," he repeated, laughing bitterly. His fingers dug into his hair as he shook his head. "You made me throw away the woman I loved. You made me deny my own child, and for what?" Mary took a step closer. "I was trying to protect you. Bianca was never good enough for you." Elvis shot to his feet, his eyes burning with anger. "Protect me? You destroyed me." He gestured around wildly. "You stole my happiness, my family. I lost my wife, my child, my own blood because of your lies." Mary's lips trembled. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "The right thing?" Elvis took a deep, shuddering breath, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Get out." Mary's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "I said get out," he repeated, his voice louder now, trembling with fury. "Pack your things and leave. I don't ever want to see you again." Mary fell to her knees. "Elvis, please, I am your mother." "You stopped being my mother the day you destroyed my life," he said coldly. "I want you gone now." Tears streamed down Mary's face as she clasped her hands together. "My son, I only did what I thought was best." Elvis turned away from her. "Leave before I call the security to throw you out." Mary knew then that she had lost. She had won the battle against Bianca, but she had lost the war. Slowly, with trembling hands, she gathered her belongings. When she finally stepped out of the house, she turned back one last time, hoping he would change his mind. But he never even looked her way. And just like that, she was gone. Days passed, but Elvis felt no relief. If anything, the pain only grew stronger. The house felt emptier than ever, the silence louder than his thoughts. No matter what he did, he couldn't escape the weight of his mistakes. Bianca, their child, he had to see them. But how? How did he face the woman he had humiliated? The The woman he had called a liar? A cheat? Eventually he could no longer bear it. He had to try, so he went looking for her. It took time, but he finally found her at her boutique. She was standing behind the counter folding baby clothes when he walked in. The moment she saw him, her entire body stiffened. Elvis swallowed the lump in his throat. Bianca, she didn't respond. Instead, she placed the clothes neatly on the counter, her movements slow and deliberate. "I need to talk to you," he said, taking a hesitant step forward. Bianca finally looked up, her gaze cold and unreadable. "About what?" he exhaled shakily. "I know the truth now. My mother. She lied about everything. She set you up. She paid that man to be in our bed." His voice broke slightly. "She made me believe things that weren't real." Bianca stared at him, her face void of emotion. "And?" Elvis felt his chest tighten. He had expected her to cry, to react, to ask him why. But her calmness was worse than anger. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have believed you. I should have trusted you." He shook his head, swallowing hard. "I lost you because I was blind." Bianca let out a small, humorless chuckle. "Blind?" she repeated, her tone sharp. "No, Elvis, you weren't blind. You made a choice." His stomach churned. "You chose to believe your mother over me. You chose to throw me out, to humiliate me, to call my child a bastard." She crossed her arms. "And now you suddenly realize you made a mistake?" "Elvis, I begged you, but you didn't listen." Elvis took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "I will do anything, Bianca. Please just give me a chance." She studied him for a moment before shaking her head. "There's nothing left to fix." He felt the ground shift beneath him. "Bianca, please." She stepped back. "I spent months crying, questioning myself, wondering how the man I loved could treat me like I was nothing. But I've healed, Elvis, and I will not go back to that pain." Elvis clenched his fists. "I love you." Bianca smiled sadly. "No, you don't. If you did, you would have fought for me back then." His vision blurred with tears. "Please, just let me see my child." Bianca's expression darkened. "You denied her. You called her a bastard. You don't get to claim her now." His knees felt weak. He wanted to beg, to fall to the ground if it meant she would change her mind. But she had already turned away. And just like that, he had lost her forever. Years passed, but the pain never left Elvis. He watched from a distance as Bianca raised Stella, a child he had never met. A child who had no idea he existed. He tried to reach out a few times, but Bianca had made her decision. She wanted nothing to do with him. And he had no choice but to respect that. As for Mary, she lived in the loneliness she had created. Elvis never spoke to her again. She tried to reach out, tried to apologize, but he ignored every attempt. She had taken everything from him, and he would never forgive her. And so she lived the rest of her life alone, drowning in regret. Elvis did too, because sometimes mistakes could never be undone, and some losses were forever. We've come to the end of this story. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. Thank you.